The boy burst through the castle gates, soaked in rain and blood, screaming only 7 words. "They're hurting my mom. Please help her." But he didn't run to a hero, he ran to a monster. The Vampire King, a creature so feared, even daylight dared not touch his name. What happened next would shatter centuries of hatred, awaken an ancient promise, and prove that sometimes, the darkest heart can burn brighter than the sun. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from right now? I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Chapter 1: The Boy and the Storm. The storm chased him like a living thing. Rain slammed against the boy's thin body as he ran through the forest, his feet bare and bleeding. Branches tore at his clothes. Lightning split the sky, white for an instant, then black again. Every breath he took burned. Still, he didn't stop. He clutched a small silver pendant tight in his fist, his mother's. It was all he had left of her since they took her away. The night around him growled. Wolves howled in the distance. Somewhere behind, he thought he heard hooves. Soldiers, maybe. But his mother's last words beat louder than his fear. "If they ever take me, run to the gates of the vampires. Find their king. Tell him your name and mine. He owes us." He hadn't understood how a monster could owe anyone anything. But when they came for her, men in red armor with torches and chains, he'd seen no one else to trust. So he ran. And now, soaked and freezing, he saw it. A black fortress rising from the fog like a mountain carved from shadow. The Vampire Citadel. Its walls stretched higher than the clouds, its iron gates sealed with thick chains, runes glowing faintly red in the rain. Every tale said no human had entered in 100 years. Those who tried never came back. Eli swallowed hard. His knees trembled. The thunder cracked again, and he screamed up at the gates. "Please, please, someone. They are hurting my mom. Help me." His voice vanished into the storm. No answer. No movement. Just endless rain. He slammed his fists against the gate again and again until his hands hurt. "She said you owe her. Lyra of Hollowmere. You owe her." The moment her name left his lips, something deep within the metal groaned. The runes along the gate blazed crimson, then white-hot. The chains rattled. Wind howled through the forest, as if the whole world took a breath. Then, with a sound like thunder cracking stone, the gates burst open. The blast threw Eli backward into the mud. His eyes widened as he stared through the opening. Inside was nothing but darkness. Cold, silent, and waiting. He took one shaky step forward, clutching his mother's pendant to his chest. "Please," he whispered into the dark. "She's all I have." And then he stepped through the gates. They slammed shut behind him. Inside the citadel, the world changed. The storm faded to a distant whisper. The air smelled of old stone and burning candles. Columns of black marble rose toward a ceiling lost in shadows. The floor was smooth obsidian that reflected the faint red glow of torches. And in the middle of that silence, hundreds of eyes turned toward him. Pale faces. Fanged mouths. Vampires. Eli froze. His breath caught in his throat. One of them, tall, with armor that gleamed like polished bone, hissed, "A human child." "Here." Another laughed. "He's brave, or foolish. Either way, he won't live long." They moved toward him, their footsteps soft as whispers. Eli backed away until his heel struck the floor's edge. "Please," he gasped. "I need your king." The vampires stopped for half a second, then began to laugh again. "Our king doesn't entertain beggars," one sneered. "Especially not little ones who wander in here to die." And then a voice, calm, deep, powerful, cut through their laughter like a blade. "Enough." The sound froze the entire hall. Every vampire bowed their head at once. Even the torches flickered lower. From the shadows at the far end of the chamber, a tall figure rose from a throne of black stone. The Vampire King. Chapter 2: The Throne of Shadows. Varian moved with the slow grace of something ancient. His hair was black as ink, his eyes deep red like dying embers. When he looked at Eli, it felt like the boy's soul had nowhere to hide. He spoke softly, but his voice filled the entire hall. "How did a child open my gates?" The boy couldn't answer. His knees gave out. He dropped to the floor, shaking, mud streaking across the black stone. "Please, Your Majesty," he stammered, voice cracking. "They took my mom," the men with the red eyes on their armor. "They hurt her. She said you owed her. She said." "Your mother's name," Varian interrupted. "Lyra," Eli whispered. "Lyra of Hollowmere." For a long moment, the Vampire King didn't move. His expression didn't change. But something in the air did, a sudden chill, like the breath of winter. He whispered one word. "Impossible." Gasps spread through the court. An older vampire woman, her gown glittering with black gems, leaned forward. "That name should be dust by now. That woman is dead." Varian ignored her. His eyes, crimson and cold, stayed fixed on the boy. "Leave us," he commanded. "My lord," one guard began. "Now." Every vampire in the hall instantly bowed and withdrew. The sound of doors closing echoed through the vast chamber until only 2 heartbeats remained, one slow and ancient, one quick and terrified. Varian descended the steps of his throne, his boots making no sound. Up close, Eli saw the faint scars across his pale hands, the slight shimmer of power around him, like mist. He had imagined the Vampire King as some kind of monster, all fangs and fire, but this one looked almost human, except for those eyes that could see right through him. Varian crouched until they were nearly eye level. "What is your name, child?" "Eli." "Do you know what I am?" "A vampire," Eli said, trembling. "The king of them." A faint smile touched Varian's lips. "And you came to me for help. Mom said you keep your promises." Varian blinked slowly, as if the words struck something old inside him. He looked away for a moment, then sighed. "Your mother was a remarkable woman. I never thought I'd hear her name again." "Then you'll help her?" Eli asked quickly, desperate. "If she lives, yes." Varian stood, his long coat whispering against the stone. "But first, I must know the truth of what binds us." He moved to a nearby altar, a small table carved with runes. He opened a silver box and withdrew a black knife, its blade gleaming faintly blue. Next to it, he placed a shallow bowl made of dark glass. "Come here." Eli hesitated. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing that will harm you. But I must test your blood. If you truly are her son, it will answer." Eli swallowed and stepped closer. Varian held out his hand. "Give me yours." The boy slowly placed his small hand in the king's. Varian's fingers were cool and strong, surprisingly gentle. With a swift motion, he drew the blade across Eli's palm, just a shallow line. A few drops of blood fell into the bowl. Varian then pressed the knife to his own hand and let his blood fall beside it. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the bowl ignited in red light. Eli gasped, stumbling back. The light flared brighter, painting the walls in blood-colored glow. Strange symbols shimmered in the air, spinning around them like fireflies. The Vampire King didn't move. His eyes closed, and he spoke in a language older than time. When the light finally faded, Varian's voice was low, almost a whisper. "The oath is real." He turned toward Eli, his expression unreadable. "Your mother saved my life once. 30 years ago, when I was wounded and hunted. She should have killed me, but instead she gave me her blood and bound me to her bloodline. That bond demands I protect you, and her." Eli's eyes widened. Then you can find her?" "Perhaps," Varian said. "Tell me what happened." The boy told him everything, how soldiers in red armor came to their village, how they demanded to know where his mother was hiding, how they burned homes and dragged her away. How she screamed for him to run. Varian listened silently, his jaw tightening. "Red armor," he murmured. "With a burning eye symbol?" Eli nodded. "Yes. They said they were taking her to make you come out." "The Inquisition," Varian said darkly. "Fanatics. They have waited decades for a reason to break our peace." He turned, pacing slowly. "This is not random. This is a trap." "I don't care," Eli cried, stepping forward. "I just want my mom back." The boy's voice echoed through the empty hall. Varian stopped, looking down at him, a trembling child, soaked and bruised, but unbroken. Something flickered in the vampire's eyes. He'd seen kings and killers kneel before him without courage, Yet this small boy dared to shout at him. "You remind me of her," Varian said softly. "Brave. Foolish. Human." He turned to the great doors. "Then we leave now. The night won't wait." Eli blinked. "You mean you're coming?" "The blood oath demands it," Varian replied. "But even if it didn't, I owe her." He moved to a wardrobe at the edge of the hall and pulled a long cloak over his armor. "You'll stay close to me. The roads beyond this citadel are not kind to your kind." "I can keep up," Eli said quickly. Varian glanced down at his torn feet and smiled faintly. "We'll see." He motioned toward the doors. "Come. The storm will hide us." As they stepped into the night, the citadel's gates opened again, not with force, but with quiet obedience. The rain had slowed to a cold drizzle, mist curling around their feet. Eli looked up at the Vampire King, the faint red in his eyes reflecting the lightning above. "Why are you helping me?" he asked softly. Varian didn't look down as he answered. "Because your mother once saved a monster," he said. "And tonight, that monster will return the favor." The boy smiled, the first true smile in days. Together, they vanished into the dark. Inside the citadel, high above the throne room, the vampire nobles gathered in secret. Their voices hissed like snakes. "His leaving the citadel? For a human child? He'll bring the Inquisition upon us all." Only one voice, softer and older, spoke differently. "No," said Lady Seraphine. "He's doing what none of us dared in a century, keeping his word." Far below, the Vampire King and the boy moved through the storm toward a destiny neither fully understood. Chapter 3: The Oath Reborn. The rain had stopped by the time they reached the edge of the Blackwood, but the ground was still slick with mud. A pale mist clung to the roots of ancient trees, curling like smoke. Eli walked close beside Varian, his small hand clenched around his mother's pendant. His legs trembled with exhaustion, yet he refused to fall behind. The Vampire King moved like a shadow, silent, graceful, unbothered by cold or fatigue. The faint red in his eyes glowed softly in the dark, a living ember guiding their path. For a while, neither spoke. Only the whisper of wind and the soft crunch of wet leaves filled the air. Then Eli broke the silence. "Is she really alive?" Varian's expression didn't change. "Your blood carries her strength. That's proof enough for me. But what if we're too late?" Varian looked down at him. "Then I will make those responsible remember why the world fears the night." The words were quiet, but they carried weight ancient and dangerous. Eli shivered, unsure if he should be afraid or comforted. They stopped beside a fallen tree. Varian knelt, brushed his hand across the damp earth, and drew strange symbols with his finger. The soil began to pulse faintly with red light. "What are you doing?" Eli asked. "Renewing the blood oath," Varian said. "The bond between us must be sealed again. If you are to walk with me through vampire lands, they must know you carry my protection." He drew a small dagger from his belt, not the same blade as before, but one carved of black stone etched with runes. He held it out to Eli. "Your hand." Eli hesitated. "Does it have to hurt?" Varian gave the faintest smile. "Only for a moment." The boy stretched out his palm. The cut was quick and shallow. His blood fell into the carved symbols, glowing brighter with each drop. Then Varian cut his own hand and let his dark blood mix with Eli's on the soil. A shock ran through the air, a ripple of unseen energy. The mist stirred violently. Eli gasped as warmth surged up his arm, then settled over his chest, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. When he looked down, he saw a faint mark glowing through the fabric of his shirt, a circle of light, half red and half gold. "What's happening?" "The oath remembers you," Varian said. "Your mother's magic was older than you realize. It tied our bloodlines together. That's why my gates opened. It's why you survived crossing my borders. You are protected by the same magic that once saved me." Eli stared at the mark, eyes wide. "Does that mean I'm part vampire now?" "No," Varian said, standing. "It means you're part promise." The wind sighed through the trees. Far away, an owl called. The forest seemed to listen. "Now," Varian said, wiping his blade clean. "Tell me everything again. Leave nothing out." Eli took a shaky breath and repeated the story: the red-armored men, the burning houses, the shouts. How his mother had hidden him in a root cellar and whispered through the floorboards, "Run to the vampires. They'll keep their promise." How he'd run until his feet bled. When he finished, Varian stood silently, staring into the darkness. "The symbol you saw, a burning eye, belongs to the Crimson Inquisition," Varian said at last. "They were banished 50 years ago after they tried to start a holy war. I thought their order was gone." "So why would they take her?" Eli asked. "Because your mother knew something they wanted," Varian said. "Or someone." He looked toward the sky where storm clouds still lingered. "The Inquisition once hunted my kind with weapons blessed by stolen magic. But Lyra destroyed their strongest relic decades ago. Perhaps they think she still has it." "What relic?" "A binding crystal," Varian said. "A shard of ancient power that can control supernatural beings. If they rebuild it, they can enslave vampires, even me." Eli's eyes went wide. "They want to control you?" Varian nodded slowly. "And they're using your mother as bait." He turned sharply and began walking again, his cloak snapping behind him. "Come. We'll need supplies and information before we reach Hollowmere. There's a village at the edge of these woods." "Another human village?" "Yes," Varian said. "But not one loyal to your king." Eli followed quickly. His legs hurt, but curiosity burned stronger than pain. "Why do humans hate vampires so much?" he asked. Varian gave a short laugh, dry and bitter. "Because fear is easier to teach than truth." "But you don't hate humans." Varian's red eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Once, I tried not to. It didn't end well." Eli wanted to ask more, but the tone in Varian's voice silenced him. They walked until the trees thinned and the faint glow of torchlight appeared through the mist. The village was small, half buried in fog. Roofs sagged, chimneys puffed weak smoke. The air smelled of damp hay and metal. As they entered, shutters slammed shut and dogs began to bark. "They know what I am," Varian murmured. "Can't you hide?" "I could," he said, "but fear feeds on rumor. Sometimes it must be faced." They approached an old inn. The sign, a faded wolf carved from wood, creaked in the wind. Varian pushed open the door. Inside, the room fell silent. A dozen faces turned toward them. Farmers, hunters, weary travelers. When their eyes fell on Varian's pale skin and crimson gaze, several men reached for their knives. The innkeeper, a heavy-set woman with gray hair, glared. "We don't serve your kind here, monster." "Good," Varian said calmly. "I didn't come to drink." He reached into his cloak and set a small pouch of gold on the counter. "I came to ask a question. Red-armored men passed through here recently. Where were they headed?" The woman's eyes darted to the coins, then back to him. "And if I tell you, what stops you from tearing my throat out after?" Varian leaned forward, his voice smooth as ice. "The same thing that stops you from lying to me, my patience." Eli stepped up beside him. "Please," he said quickly. "They took my mom. We just want to find her." The woman blinked, startled by the boy's voice. Her gaze softened for a moment. "Your mother, did she have brown hair and a scar on her cheek?" Eli's heart jumped. "Yes." The innkeeper sighed, rubbing her hands on her apron. I saw her. 3 days ago. Soldiers had her in chains. They went east, toward the old ruins by the river. But don't go there, boy. That place is cursed." "Everything worth saving is cursed," Varian said, sweeping the coins back into his cloak. "Come, Eli." As they stepped out into the cold night again, the boy looked up at him. "You didn't have to scare her." "Fear opens mouths faster than kindness," Varian replied without apology. "And time is not our ally." Eli frowned. "You talk like my mom used to." "Then she's smarter than most." They walked on until the torches of the village were gone. The moon broke through the clouds, bathing the forest path in silver light. For the first time, Eli noticed that Varian's shadow moved oddly, stretching farther than it should, as if alive. He looked up at the king. "What are you going to do when we find them?" Varian's expression turned cold again. "Whatever I must." Chapter 4: Whispers of War. The ruins by the river weren't ruins at all. From a distance, Eli had expected crumbling stones and weeds. Instead, what stood before them was an encampment, fires burning in iron pits, tents marked with the red eye of the Inquisition, soldiers in armor polishing silver blades. They crouched on a hillside overlooking the scene. The smell of smoke and oil drifted upward. "There's at least 20 of them," Eli whispered. "Maybe more." Varian's gaze scanned the camp, his eyes glowing faintly. 32. 2 mags. 1 captain. And he paused. Something worse. Eli followed his gaze and saw it, a tall black cage near the center of the camp. Inside, a faint light flickered, like fire trapped in glass. "What is that?" he asked. "The start of a ritual," Varian said grimly. "They've begun building the binding circle. For you." "Yes. And they'll use your mother's blood to fuel it." Eli's stomach twisted. "We have to stop them." Varian's eyes narrowed. "If I attack now, they'll use her as shield. We need to be smarter." He scanned the forest and pointed to a narrow ravine. "There. We can get closer unseen." They moved silently through the undergrowth, Varian guiding each step. He seemed to blend into the darkness, his cloak merging with shadow. Eli tried to mimic him, but every twig under his foot snapped too loudly. Still, Varian never scolded him. Only once did he whisper, "Breathe slower. The night listens better when you're quiet." When they reached the ravine's edge, they could hear voices clearly. "The Inquisitor said the king will come for her," one soldier grumbled. "Then we'll be ready," another replied. "I can't wait to drive a stake through that demon's heart." Eli's hands clenched. "They talk about you like you're not even human." "I'm not," Varian said. "But they talk about all things they fear the same way." He turned to Eli. "Stay here." "What?" "No. You can't." "You will do as I say," Varian said, eyes flashing. "I gave your mother my word to protect you. Don't make that harder." Eli bit his lip but nodded. "Promise you'll bring her back." Varian's expression softened slightly. "I've never broken a promise yet." He slipped away into the darkness. Eli waited, heart hammering. Minutes passed. The sound of laughter drifted from the camp, then a sudden silence. And then, chaos. Shouts. Crashing metal. A scream cut short. The camp erupted in confusion. Eli saw shadows moving faster than thought, one of them Varian, a blur of black and red. Soldiers swung torches wildly, their light chasing after nothing. Within seconds, half the camp was in ruin. But then, from the cage, a brilliant white light flared, blinding. A wave of force burst outward, knocking men and tents into the air. Eli covered his eyes. Varian. When the light dimmed, he saw the vampire king on one knee, smoke rising from his armor. Chains of glowing silver coiled around his arms like serpents. From the center of the camp, a man in crimson armor stepped forward. His face was pale, his smile sharp. "Well, well," the man said. "The great Varian of the Night Court. I was beginning to think the bait wasn't juicy enough." Varian's voice was a growl. "Let her go. All in due time," the man said. "But first, I'd like to see if the legends are true." He raised his hand. The chains tightened, sizzling against Varian's skin. The king gritted his teeth, muscles straining. "Do you think silver can hold me?" he hissed. "No," the man said smoothly. "But faith can." He whispered something, and the symbols on his armor blazed with holy fire. Varian roared as the chains pulled him to the ground. Eli couldn't stay hidden. He leapt from the ravine and ran into the camp. "Stop it. You're killing him." The soldiers shouted in alarm, but the man in crimson just looked at the boy and smiled. "And who's this?" "Ah. The child of Lyra. How fitting." Eli stumbled forward, clutching the pendant. "Let my mom go." "Soon," the man said, turning his gaze back to Varian. "After the ritual." Eli looked toward the cage. Through the glowing light, he saw a woman bound in chains, her face bruised, her eyes open and terrified. "Mom." Her voice was weak but fierce. "Eli. Run." The soldiers laughed. The man in crimson raised a hand and Eli felt himself lifted off the ground by invisible force. The pendant around his neck burned against his skin. Varian's voice thundered. Release him. Power burst from the Vampire King, a surge of shadow that shattered the silver chains. Darkness exploded through the camp like a storm. Torches went out. Soldiers screamed. When the light returned, Varian stood free, his eyes burning like molten fire. You shouldn't have touched him, he said. The man in crimson drew his sword. You'll regret that, monster. Their blades met, steel against darkness, and the night itself seemed to scream. By dawn, the camp was ash and ruin. The Inquisitors fled into the woods, their leader vanishing with them. Varian stood among the wreckage, his cloak torn, smoke curling from his wounds. He looked down at Eli, who knelt beside his unconscious mother. She's alive, Varian said quietly. But weak. The ritual drained her. Eli looked up at him. You saved us. No, Varian said. Not yet. This was only their trap. The real war hasn't begun. He lifted his gaze toward the rising sun, its light barely touching the horizon. They wanted me to come out of hiding, he said. Now the whole world will know the Vampire King walks again. The wind carried distant bells, warning signals spreading from village to village. Eli clutched his mother's hand, trembling. What happens now? Varian's red eyes glowed brighter. Now, he said, we hunt the truth. Chapter 5 Into the Wormwood. The forest swallowed the light. Eli followed close behind the Vampire King as they stepped into the Wormwood, a place whispered about even in bedtime stories. The trees here were older than kingdoms, gnarled, black-barked, their roots twisting like veins through the damp earth. A thick mist coiled between them, glowing faintly blue, as though the forest itself breathed. No birds sang. No wind stirred. Only the distant drip of unseen water echoed through the silence. Varian's cloak brushed silently against the ground as he moved. Eli trailed him carefully, his small boots crunching on fallen leaves. He still clutched his mother's pendant, now cleaned of ash and blood, holding it like a shield against the dark. Why are we walking through here? Eli asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Because the Wormwood doesn't belong to men or vampires, Varian said quietly. The Inquisition will not follow us here. Why not? Varian stopped and glanced back. Because nothing that enters this place leaves unchanged. Eli swallowed hard, suddenly wishing he hadn't asked. He looked around. The mist shifted slowly, forming vague shapes that dissolved when he blinked. Faces, maybe, or memories of faces. Are there monsters here? Everything in this forest is a monster to someone, Varian said. Even us. They walked for hours without speaking. Time felt strange. The air grew colder. At some point, Eli noticed the tree's branches were covered in faintly glowing fungi, like tiny lanterns, lighting their way in pale blue. He tried to take comfort in their glow, but the deeper they went, the dimmer the light became. Finally, Varian stopped beside an ancient stone arch half buried in moss. Strange runes were carved into it. He touched the markings gently. This was once a gate, he murmured. A bridge between realms. When vampires still walked among gods. Eli frowned. You mean, before you hid from humans? Varian's gaze lingered on the stone. Before humans learned to fear us and before we gave them reason to. The king's voice was heavy, burdened by memories too old to count. Eli wanted to ask more, but something shifted behind them. A low growl rumbled through the mist. Varian straightened, every movement sharp and alert. Stay behind me. Eli froze as a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the fog. Then another pair. And another. 3 enormous shapes emerged, wolves, but not like any Eli had ever seen. Their fur was black as void, their eyes bright gold. Their breath came out as steam, and their teeth gleamed like wet bone. The largest wolf stepped forward and lowered its head, not in attack, but in challenge. Shadow wolves, Varian muttered. Hunters of the dark. The lead wolf growled, circling slowly. Eli's pulse thundered in his ears. What do we do? He whispered. We remember who rules the night, Varian said softly. He took a step forward and raised one pale hand. His voice changed deeper, older, carrying power that trembled through the air. He spoke words Eli couldn't understand, a language that made the mist vibrate and the ground shiver. The wolves stopped growling. They lowered their heads further. One whimpered. The largest wolf stepped closer, towering over Varian, then bent its neck. The vampire king laid a hand on its muzzle. "We mean no challenge," Varian said gently. "We pass through, nothing more." The wolf's eyes flicked toward Eli. The boy stood frozen, afraid to breathe. "Don't run," Varian murmured. "Don't look away. Let it see your heart." Eli swallowed, forcing himself to stand still. The wolf sniffed him, its hot breath brushing his face. Then, slowly, it stepped back and melted into the mist. The others followed. The forest went silent again. Eli exhaled shakily. Did you just talk to them?" "Commanded them," Varian corrected. "They recognize my blood. Can you control everything that lives in the dark?" Varian glanced at him. "Control? No. The darkness is never truly tamed. But it listens, when it chooses." They continued walking. The mist grew thinner, and faint moonlight filtered through the canopy. Eli felt his heart begin to slow. He looked up at Varian's back, at the calm steadiness in every step. "You're not like I thought vampires would be," he said after a while. "And how did you imagine us?" "Monsters. My teacher said you drink people's blood and laugh about it." Varian gave a small, humorless chuckle. "Your teacher isn't entirely wrong. Vampires drink blood. It is our nature. But laughing about it, that is a cruelty of choice." Eli thought about that quietly. "Then why do people still hate you?" "Because hatred is easier to keep than understanding. It gives them someone to blame when the world feels cruel." He looked down at Eli. "And because some vampires enjoy being the monsters humans expect us to be." Eli kicked a pebble. "That's stupid." "It is," Varian agreed softly. "But it is the way of things." They reached a clearing where the trees gave way to moonlight. The mist parted to reveal a pool of perfectly still water. In the center stood a single stone statue, an angel with broken wings, half submerged. Eli stared. "What is this place?" "A grave," Varian said. "For a world long gone." He knelt by the pool, dipped his fingers into the water, and whispered a few words. The surface shimmered, and faint images appeared, flashes of memory. A woman in chains. A burning eye carved into armor. A fortress of black stone. "The vision spell works," Varian said grimly. "They've moved her north. To Blackthorn Fortress. Can we go now?" Eli asked eagerly. Varian shook his head. "Not yet. The Inquisition expects me to come. They will have wards strong enough to wound even me. We need allies, and information." He looked toward the distant horizon, where faint red light marked the edge of the human lands. "There's a city not far from here," he said. "Elden Reach. It's crawling with spies, but we'll find what we need there." Eli frowned. "But won't they notice you?" Varian's eyes glowed faintly, and a ripple of shadow passed over him. For a moment, his body seemed to dissolve into smoke. Then he reappeared, looking almost human, his eyes dark brown instead of red, his skin flushed with color. "They won't," he said. "At least, not until I want them to." He looked down at Eli. "Stay close. The night is safer than daylight now." They left the Wormwood behind, the mist closing silently over the path as if swallowing their footprints. Behind them, deep in the forest, the shadow wolves howled once, long and low. It sounded like a warning. Chapter 6, The Shadow Wolves' Warning. Elden Reach was nothing like Hollowmere. The city stretched wide and uneven, built in layers upon the hills, its rooftops shining under moonlight. Towers and smokestacks jutted into the sky like jagged teeth. Lanterns glowed along crooked streets, and the air buzzed with the sounds of merchants, guards, and stray dogs. Eli couldn't stop staring. He had never seen so many people or so much light. Varian, disguised under his cloak, moved through the crowd with quiet purpose. The magic he'd woven made him appear slightly blurred to human eyes, easy to overlook. Only Eli saw him clearly. "Stay close," Varian murmured as they passed a group of armored soldiers. "The Inquisition has spies everywhere." Eli nodded and kept his head down. His stomach growled, and he glanced at a bakery stand piled with bread. "Can I?" he started. Varian reached into his cloak and handed him a warm roll he'd already stolen without the vendor noticing. Eli blinked, then laughed quietly. "Did you just borrowed it?" Varian said with a faint smirk. "You need food more than they need one coin." Eli bit into the bread, the warmth filling him. For a few steps, the world felt almost normal. Then he saw the posters. They were plastered on walls and doors, rough sketches of fanged faces, glowing eyes, dripping blood. Beneath each image, bold words screamed, "Beware the vampire menace. Report all suspicious activity." At the bottom of each poster was the same red symbol, a burning eye. Eli stopped walking. His throat tightened. "They're talking about you." Varian's gaze flicked to the poster, his expression unreadable. "No, they're talking about the idea of me. A legend to scare children. But sometimes legends are easier to control than truths." "It's not fair," Eli said. "You saved me. You're trying to save my mom. Why can't they see that?" "Because their world survives on fear," Varian said. "Fear keeps people obedient. The Inquisition feeds it. Every lie needs a monster." They turned into a narrow alley, away from the noise of the market. Varian glanced around, then knocked 3 times on a heavy wooden door. For a moment, there was silence. Then it opened a crack. An old woman peered out, her sharp grey eyes landing first on Eli, then sliding past to Varian. Her lips pressed thin. "You're either brave or foolish, walking in here, vampire," she hissed. "The Inquisition has men on every street." "Still as welcoming as ever, Helena," Varian said. His voice softened slightly. "I need your help." The door opened wider. The woman, Helena, stepped aside. "Then get in before you doom us both." Inside, the house smelled of ink and dust. Books covered every surface. Scrolls littered the floor. Candles burned low, their light trembling against the walls. Helena rounded on Varian the moment the door closed. "You shouldn't have come here. They're hunting you like a prize stag. I've heard they've built a cage just for you." "I've seen it," Varian said quietly. "And I've seen who they hold within it." Helena froze. "Lyra? Alive," Varian confirmed. "But barely. The Inquisition means to use her to bind me. They're building a ritual stronger than any I've seen." Helena sank into a chair, pale. "Then the old legends are true. They're rebuilding the Velsera binding." Eli looked between them. "What's that?" Helena turned to him, her eyes softening. "A spell so powerful it can trap a soul inside another's body. It was forbidden centuries ago because it breaks both mind and magic. If they finish it, your vampire friend will become their weapon." "Not their weapon," Varian said, his voice low. "Their apocalypse." He moved closer to the desk and began scanning the scattered maps. "I need the layout of Blackthorn Fortress." Helena frowned. "You think you can just walk in? I've done harder things." She sighed, then dug through her papers until she found an old parchment. "Here. I drew this years ago when I served as a scholar there. The dungeons are below the main hall. They'll keep Lyra there. But the ritual chamber is above it, at the center tower." Varian studied the map. "Good. Then we enter from below. Through the aqueduct." "It's sealed," Helena warned. "Not for long." She looked up at him sharply. "If you do this, you'll start a war." "The war already started," Varian said. "I'm just ending it differently than they expect." Helena stared at him for a long time. Then she smiled faintly, the lines on her face softening. Still arrogant as ever. Eli stepped closer to her desk. "Can you help us?" Helena reached out and touched his cheek gently. "Your mother would be proud of you, boy. You have her courage." She turned back to Varian. "You'll need this." She handed him a small vial of shimmering blue liquid. "Drink it before you enter their wards. It'll weaken their holy barriers for a few minutes. No longer." Varian took it and nodded. "That will be enough." As they prepared to leave, Helena caught his arm. "Varian," she said quietly. "You could run. You could hide. You don't have to save her." He met her eyes. "Yes, I do." Helena's gaze softened. Then don't die, old friend. I'm too stubborn for that, he said, then turned to Eli. Come. The night is on our side. They stepped back into the alley, cloaked in shadow once more. The streets of Elden Reach glowed gold behind them. Eli looked up at the Vampire King. Helena said the spell can trap souls. What if they finish it before we get there? Varian's expression hardened. Then I'll tear the spell apart from the inside. Is that possible? No, Varian said. But it's worth trying. They disappeared into the dark, two figures moving toward a fortress of light, one human, one monster, bound by a promise that had already begun to change the world. And far above, in the clouds beyond sight, thunder rumbled, soft and distant, like the whisper of a war not yet begun. Chapter 7: Memories of Blood. Night cloaked the world in silence. The air outside Elden Reach had turned colder, heavy with the scent of rain and pine. Eli walked beside Varian through the valley road, their boots crunching on gravel. The torches of the city were long behind them now, swallowed by darkness. The boy clutched his cloak tighter around himself. His stomach was still full from the bread Helena had given him, but fear sat in his throat like a stone. Varian, he said quietly. Can I ask you something? You already are, Varian replied without looking back. How did my mom save you? Varian slowed. His crimson eyes dimmed, flickering with memory. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he gestured for Eli to sit beside a fallen tree. You should rest while I talk. You've walked farther than most grown men tonight. Eli obeyed, sitting cross-legged. The forest around them whispered with distant wind. Varian leaned against the tree trunk, his voice lowering into the calm tone of someone remembering an old wound. It was 30 years ago. I was younger then, reckless, angry, certain I could shape the world with fear alone. There was a vampire who defied me, killing humans for sport. He wanted to start another war between our kinds. Eli's eyes widened. So you hunted him? Yes. For 3 nights, I chased him across burned villages and empty fields. But he was cunning. He lured me into daylight. The king's voice turned distant. He caught me in silver chains. They burned like fire. He left me there, tied to a tree while the sun rose. I should have turned to ash. But you didn't, Eli whispered. No, Varian said. Because a woman found me. He looked toward the horizon, as if he could still see that moment. She was a healer. Brave enough, or foolish enough, to touch what everyone feared. She should have killed me, but she didn't. She saw the chains and broke them, knowing full well what I was. Eli leaned forward. She saved you? Yes, Varian said softly. And when I asked her why, she said, because mercy means nothing if you only give it to those who deserve it. He smiled faintly. That woman was your mother. Eli blinked, trying to imagine his mother standing before the Vampire King. Was she scared? Terrified, Varian said with a short laugh. Her hands shook the whole time. But she didn't stop. When I was free, I asked what she wanted in return. She said only one thing. Promise me that my village will always be safe from you. He turned to Eli. So I swore it in blood. That oath is what bound us. It's why the gates opened for you. Eli touched the pendant around his neck. She always told me to keep this safe. She said it was proof of a promise. Varian nodded. It is. The metal carries a drop of my blood. It recognizes your bloodline. The boy stared at the pendant glowing faintly in the moonlight. You must have really cared about her. The silence that followed was long. I respected her, Varian said finally. Perhaps more than anyone else I've known. She saw humanity in me when I'd forgotten what that word meant. Eli watched him quietly. You talk like you've lived forever. I've seen 6 centuries, Varian said. Empires rise, cities burn, peace crumble into dust. Time teaches you one lesson: everything ends. Not everything, Eli said stubbornly. You still remember her. Varian smiled faintly, his fangs glinting in the moonlight. You sound like her too. The wind rustled through the trees. The Vampire King stood, brushing dirt from his coat. Come. We're close to Hollowmere. I need to see what's left. They walked again through the sleeping forest. Eventually, The smell of smoke reached them. Eli's heart sank. When they crested the last hill, he froze. The village lay below them, his home, but it was gone. Houses blackened by fire. Ash drifting like snow. Eli's voice cracked. No. He ran forward, stumbling down the slope. Varian followed silently. The closer they came, the worse it looked. The church tower had collapsed. The well was filled with debris. Eli's feet slipped on the wet ash, but he didn't stop until he reached the ruins of his own house. Mom's garden, he whispered. She planted sunflowers here. Now it was only burned earth. Varian's gaze swept across the destruction. They tried to make this look like a vampire attack, he said grimly. See the claw marks on the walls? Too precise. Too deliberate. He crouched beside the remains of a burned doorframe and touched the wood. It was still warm. Beneath the ash, faint symbols glowed red. What are those? Eli asked. Binding runes, Varian murmured. Magic forbidden even among my kind. They used dark energy to disguise their actions. The Inquisition wants the world to believe I did this. He stood, his eyes burning. They're preparing for war. Eli's voice trembled. Everyone I knew, they're gone. Varian listened for a moment, then said quietly, not all. I hear heartbeats beneath the rubble. Faint, but alive. Eli turned sharply. You can hear them? Yes. Stay close. They began digging. Under the ruins of the baker's house, they found an old man, barely breathing but alive. Under a fallen wall, a young woman groaned weakly. By dawn, they had uncovered 6 survivors. The boy's tears streaked lines down his soot-covered cheeks. We have to help them. We will, Varian said. But we must move quickly. The Inquisition will return. As they prepared to leave, one of the survivors, a blacksmith named Garrick, grabbed Varian's arm weakly. You're him, the man rasped. The Vampire King. Yes, Varian said simply. Garrick's lips cracked into a faint smile. She was right, she said you'd come. Said you'd keep your word. Where did they take her? Varian demanded. Garrick coughed, blood flecking his lips. East, to the fortress at Blackthorn. I heard them say it. They wanted you to come. Why? To finish what they started. Garrick's eyes fluttered. They said a name, sounded like Velsera. Varian froze. You're sure? I'll never forget it. Varian rose, his face darkening. Velsera. The ancient binding ritual. Eli looked up at him fearfully. What does that mean? It means they're not just trying to trap me, Varian said. They want to use me to unleash something far worse than death. Chapter 8 Hollowmere Burns. They buried the dead as dawn broke. Eli helped as best he could, his hands blistered and raw. Varian worked silently beside him, his movements precise, almost ritualistic. When the last body was covered, the Vampire King pressed his hand to the ground. Rest, he murmured. No shadow will disturb you. A faint shimmer of red spread over the earth like mist. Eli stared. What did you do? Gave them protection, Varian said. The same mercy your mother once gave me. They walked through the village square. Smoke still curled from the ruins, carrying the bitter scent of burned wood and blood. Why would anyone do this? Eli asked, voice trembling. Varian's expression was grim. Because war needs monsters. The Inquisition needs to show the world that I've broken the peace. Every lie begins with a corpse. He knelt beside a scorched wall, running his fingers over the symbols again. These marks aren't just for disguise. They're part of a summoning ritual. Summoning what? Not what, Varian said. Who? He stood, his eyes narrowing. They mean to call something old, something powerful enough to destroy both man and vampire. Before Eli could respond, a faint sound reached them, hooves in the distance. Varian's head turned sharply. Soldiers. He grabbed Eli's shoulder. Into the cellar. Now. They slipped into a half-collapsed house and crouched behind broken beams. Through the gaps, they saw riders entering the village, red armor gleaming, banners marked with the burning eye. Eli clenched his fists. It's them. Varian's eyes glowed faintly. Stay quiet. The The soldiers dismounted, spreading through the ruins. Their captain, a tall man with silver hair, knelt beside the ashes of the church. "Check the graves," he ordered. "If the bodies haven't turned, it means the vampire king was here." "He's close." Eli's heart pounded. Varian leaned closer. "When I tell you to run, go west. Find the river and follow it until I come for you." "No," Eli whispered fiercely. "I'm not leaving you." Varian gave a small, cold smile. "You sound more like your mother every hour." He stood suddenly, stepping into the open. The soldiers spun, drawing blades. "You're looking for me," Varian said. The captain froze. By the light, it's him. Varian moved faster than the eye could follow. In seconds, 3 soldiers lay unconscious, their weapons snapped. The rest backed away, trembling. "Tell your masters," Varian said, his voice low and steady. "Their lies end tonight." The captain raised a trembling sword. "You think mercy will save you, monster?" "No," Varian said. "Honor will." He turned, grabbed Eli's arm, and they vanished into shadow. When they reappeared, they were miles away, standing on a hill overlooking the valley. The sun was rising behind them, painting the sky red. Eli stared at the fortress in the distance, black stone walls rising from a river of mist. "Blackthorn," Varian said. "The heart of their power." "That's where she is," Eli whispered. "Yes," Varian said. "And that's where this ends." He knelt and pressed his hand to the soil again. Blood glowed faintly around his fingers, forming a trail of light stretching toward the fortress. "Your mother's blood calls to me," he said. "The bond makes her visible to my senses. They cannot hide her from me now." Eli looked up, hope and fear twisting inside him. "Then let's go get her." "Not yet," Varian said. "Blackthorn is within human lands. We need a plan and an advantage." He stood, his eyes reflecting the distant glow of the fortress. "The Inquisition wants a war. But I'll give them something else, truth." The boy frowned. "What do you mean?" "They've painted me as the monster in their story," Varian said quietly. "So tonight, I'll become the ending they don't expect." Eli looked up at the vampire king, at the determination in his crimson eyes. "You really think we can beat them?" Varian's voice softened. "Your mother believed in mercy over fear. I've spent centuries proving her wrong. Maybe it's time to prove her right." He started down the hill, cloak billowing behind him like smoke. "Come, Eli. We have work to do and monsters to disappoint." The boy followed, the glow of dawn at their backs and the black fortress ahead. The wind carried the scent of ash and iron, whispering through the ruins of Hollowmere. Somewhere far away, the sound of a horn echoed a call to arms. But in that growing light, for the first time since the stormy night when the gates had opened, Eli felt something stronger than fear. Hope. And beside him, the vampire king's shadow stretched long across the earth, moving like a promise yet to be kept. Chapter 9: City of Lies. The journey to Eldenport took 3 nights. They followed the river north through fog and moonlight, the water whispering beside them. Eli grew quieter each day, the weight of what he'd seen in Hollowmere pressing on him like stones. Varian said little. His focus never wavered from the horizon, where the fortress of Blackthorn loomed like a black scar in the dawn haze. When they reached the outskirts of the city, the world shifted again. Gone was the silence of forest and ruin. Here the air was alive with noise, horses, carts, bells, merchants shouting. Smoke from 100 chimneys choked the sky. Eldenport, the largest city in the human realm. Its walls were high, its gates lined with guards in red cloaks bearing the mark of the burning eye. Varian stood in the shadow of a broken windmill, studying the patrols below. "They've turned the city into a fortress," he murmured. "The Inquisition's influence spreads faster than rot." Eli looked down at the crowd beyond the gates. "How will we get in?" Varian's lips curved faintly. "The same way all monsters do, by pretending to be human." He touched his own chest, whispering words Eli couldn't understand. Shadows rippled across his skin, changing the color of his eyes, the tone of his face. When the illusion settled, the vampire king looked almost ordinary. Pale, yes, but mortal. Only his presence gave him away, too calm, too still. "And me," Eli asked. You need only be yourself, Varian said. No one looks twice at frightened children. They waited until a caravan of merchants approached the gate. Then Varian took Eli's hand and walked with them, head bowed, blending seamlessly with the crowd. The guards checked crates, not faces. No one noticed when two strangers slipped inside the city walls. Inside, Eldenport was chaos. Crowded streets wound like veins through endless stone. Lanterns flickered above rows of shops. Market criers yelled prices for bread, cloth, silver charms. And everywhere Eli looked, posters. He stopped to read one, printed in bold red ink. The Vampire King walks again. Beware his lies. Report any sightings to the nearest inquisitor. Beneath the warning was a crude drawing of Varian's face, fangs bared, eyes aflame. Eli turned to look at him. They made you look like a monster. It's easier than making themselves look guilty, Varian said. Come. They moved through the alleys until the noise thinned. A row of old buildings slumped together near the river, their windows shuttered, their doors marked with soot. Varian stopped before one with faded runes carved above the doorframe. This place, he said, was once neutral ground. If the old magic still lingers, we can speak here without spies listening. He knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. After a long silence, a voice rasped from inside. Who calls? A friend who owes too many debts, Varian said. The door opened, revealing a figure wrapped in a dark shawl. Her hair was silver, her eyes sharp as glass. Varian, she hissed. You should be ashes. And yet I'm here, he said. Hello, Helena. Helena blinked, then stepped aside. Get in before someone sees you. Inside was a maze of scrolls and books, the air thick with candle smoke. Eli's eyes widened at the shelves, hundreds of them, all overflowing with maps, relics, and strange crystal jars that pulsed faintly with light. You brought a child? Helena snapped. He's not just a child, Varian said. He's Lyra's son. At that, Helena froze. Her hard expression softened into disbelief. Lyra, she's alive. For now, Varian said. The Inquisition holds her at Blackthorn. They're preparing a ritual. Helena muttered a curse under her breath. Velsera, she said. They mean to bind you. Eli frowned. You know about it. Helena sighed and sank into a chair. I helped study it, long ago, before I realized what kind of evil it was. The ritual fuses life and shadow. It doesn't just trap a soul, it consumes it. If they finish it, your vampire friend will become their weapon. Then we stop them, Eli said fiercely. Helena smiled sadly. You sound just like your mother. Varian moved closer. I need a way in. The fortress is surrounded by holy wards. Silver, runes, blessed fire. I can't pass through unnoticed. Helena rifled through her papers. There's an old aqueduct beneath the lower wall. It was sealed decades ago, but the water still runs beneath. If you break the grate, you'll reach the dungeons. She handed him a map. It's suicide, of course. But I doubt that will stop you. Nothing has yet, Varian said. Helena's eyes softened for a heartbeat. You've changed. You used to thrive on destruction. Perhaps I learned from better teachers. Her gaze flicked to Eli, then back. Then listen well. The Inquisition has grown stronger than you know. Their Grand Inquisitor, Morent, is no fool. He's gathering relics from every forgotten corner of the realm. He's trying to rewrite history itself. History can be rewritten, Varian said quietly. But truth has a way of bleeding through. Helena exhaled sharply. Then you'll need protection. Take this. She handed him a small glass vial filled with shimmering blue liquid. Drink it before you cross their wards. It'll dull the burn of holy light for a few minutes. Not long enough for comfort. Varian nodded. Thank you, old friend. Helena turned to Eli. Your mother once saved me too, in her way. She told me the same thing she told him. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you're terrified. Eli swallowed hard. Then I guess I'll try to be brave. Helena smiled faintly. You already are. Varian opened the door, but before he left, Helena caught his arm. Varian, she whispered, if you succeed, the world will see you differently. If you fail, they'll use your death as proof you were everything they said you were. I've been called worse than a monster, he said. She smiled. Yes. But you've never tried to be anything else. They slipped back into the street, cloaked in shadow. The city lights glowed behind them like dying embers. So now what? Eli asked. Now, Varian said, we find the aqueduct and prepare for hell. Chapter 10, The Scholar's Secret. The aqueduct entrance was buried beneath the old part of the city, where the river met the outer walls. They found it just before dawn, half hidden by moss and rubble. A rusted iron grate blocked the tunnel mouth, water rushing beneath it. Varian knelt beside it, studying the runes carved along the edge. Inquisitor work. Holy seals, meant to burn whatever touches them. Can you break them? Eli asked. Not alone. Varian pulled the blue vial from his cloak, uncorked it, and drank. The liquid shimmered down his throat like liquid fire. He shuddered once, then placed both hands on the grate. A hiss filled the air. Smoke rose from his palms as metal melted beneath his grip. The stench of burning iron and blood filled the tunnel. Varian, your hand. Eli cried. Pain is temporary, Varian said through clenched teeth. Promises are not. With a final pull, the grate tore free. The water surged forward, splashing their boots. Varian's burned skin healed slowly as he looked down the dark tunnel ahead. Stay close. The wards weaken here, but other things live in the dark. They waded in. The water was cold enough to bite. The walls dripped slime, carved with faint runes that glowed red as they passed. Every echo seemed louder than it should be. Eli shivered. It smells like rot. Old magic, Varian said. Every city hides its filth beneath beauty. Humans call it progress. I call it denial. As they moved deeper, the tunnel widened into an underground canal. A faint light shimmered ahead, lanterns hanging from the ceiling, swaying gently. Voices drifted from around a bend. Varian raised a hand. Guards. He pressed a finger to his lips, then stepped into the shadows. For a moment, his body seemed to dissolve, just darkness, no form. When he spoke again, his voice came from everywhere at once. Stay hidden until I call. Eli ducked behind a column. 2 armored guards stood by the lanterns, speaking idly. Inquisitor says the king's coming himself, one said. Can you imagine? The devil in flesh. He won't make it past the wards, the other said. And if he does, Morent will bind him like a dog. Eli's heart pounded. He wanted to shout at them, but before he could, the lantern light flickered. A cold gust swept through the tunnel. The guards turned, startled. One lifted his torch. Who's there? A shadow rose behind them, tall, silent, impossible. 2 red eyes flared like coals. Boo, Varian said. The torch went out. When the light returned, both guards were unconscious on the floor. Varian reappeared, brushing dust from his coat. You killed them? Eli asked. No, Varian said. They'll wake up with headaches and stories no one will believe. He motioned for Eli to follow. They passed through an archway and found themselves staring up at the underside of the fortress itself, Blackthorn's dungeons carved into the bedrock above. We're here, Varian said. A stairway climbed upward into faint orange light. The air smelled of smoke and salt. They ascended quietly, step by step, until they reached a heavy iron door. Voices murmured beyond it, chanting, rhythmic and cold. That's the ritual, Varian whispered. They've already begun. Eli's stomach twisted. What do? We find your mother first, Varian said. If they finish before I reach them, the spell will bind my soul. Then no one, human or vampire, will be safe. He placed a hand on the door and whispered a word. The lock clicked open with a soft snap. They stepped inside. The dungeon was a long corridor lined with cells, torches flickering dimly on the walls. The smell of blood and silver filled the air. In the farthest cell, chained to the wall, was a woman with torn clothes and fire in her eyes. Mom! Eli shouted. Lyra's head lifted weakly. Eli! Varian strode forward, ignoring the searing glow of holy symbols on the bars. His hands smoked as he gripped the lock and crushed it like glass. You came, Lyra whispered, tears cutting through the dirt on her face. I gave you my word, Varian said. He helped her stand, supporting her weight with one arm. Can you walk? Enough to run, she said. But Varian, listen. This isn't just a trap for you. It's bait for war. Morent wants you to fall so both our kinds destroy each other. He'll fail, Varian said. The ground trembled. From above came a deep hum, growing louder, the ritual. Eli looked up, terrified. They're doing it now. Go, Varian ordered. Back through the aqueduct. I'll end this. You can't fight all of them, Lyra cried. Varian turned to her, his eyes blazing. I am not fighting for me. I'm fighting for the promise you made me keep. He stepped toward the stairs leading up. Take your son and run. If I live, I'll find you. If I don't tell the world what really happened here. Eli grabbed his cloak. Please, don't. Courage, Eli, Varian said gently. You already have more of it than most kings. Then he was gone, vanishing into the firelight above. Lyra clutched her son close, tears slipping down her face. The fortress shook again. Magic pulsed through the walls, alive and hungry. Somewhere above them, the vampire king walked alone into the lion's den. Chapter 11, The Ritual of Chains. The staircase wound upward in circles, stone steps slick with damp and blood. The air grew hotter with every turn. The deeper Varian went into the fortress, the more the sound of chanting filled the halls, rhythmic, relentless, echoing through the stone like the heartbeat of something alive. He emerged into a vast chamber beneath a shattered dome. The ceiling opened to the storm above, lightning flashing through cracks of ancient glass. At the center stood the ritual circle, carved into the marble floor, glowing with crimson light. Around it, dozens of inquisitors knelt in prayer, their voices rising in unison. And at the far end, standing before an altar of black stone, was Grand Inquisitor Morent. Tall, thin, clad in crimson armor chased with silver filigree, his face was pale and sharp. His eyes were the color of dying fire. He smiled when he saw Varian. Ah, Morent said softly. The King of Shadows arrives, right on time. Varian stepped into the light. You've gone to great lengths to summon me, Morent. What do you want? You know what I want. Morent's voice carried easily through the chamber. Peace. Real peace, not this fragile lie you built centuries ago. Humans live in fear of your kind. Vampires feed on our children. The cycle never ends. So I will end it. He spread his arms toward the circle. When this ritual completes, your power will be bound to me. I will use it to burn the old world clean. Varian's eyes narrowed. You would enslave one monster to make yourself another. Enslave? Morent laughed softly. No, my king. I will redeem you. Lightning cracked through the broken dome, illuminating the dozens of chained figures at the edges of the room, men and women in tattered clothes. Prisoners. Their faces pale. Their wrists bleeding. Human sacrifices. Varian's jaw tightened. You kill your own to feed your holy light. Light demands a price, Morent said. And these lives are a small cost for salvation. He gestured toward the runes on the floor. They pulsed in time with the prisoners' heartbeats, drawing their life force into the circle. At its center, a crystal floated large as a man's chest, glowing with shifting colors. Varian knew it instantly. The Velsera shard, the relic thought destroyed decades ago. You rebuilt it, he said. With pieces your kind left behind, Morent said proudly. Fragments of your victims, sealed with your own blood. Your sins make perfect fuel. The Inquisitor raised a hand, and the chanting grew louder. The light from the shard brightened until it hurt to look at. Varian's fangs bared. You think binding me will make you a god? Morent smiled thinly. No, Varian. It will make me justice. The Vampire King moved first. In the blink of an eye, he crossed the chamber, shadows curling around him like wings. The first row of Inquisitors fell without a sound, their bodies collapsing as darkness cut through them. He leapt toward the altar, claws extended, and slammed into an invisible wall of light. The impact sent a crack through the marble floor. His body arched in pain as the barrier burned through his skin. Morent stepped closer, eyes gleaming. You cannot touch me, creature. The circle feeds on your presence. The more you fight, the stronger it becomes. Varian dropped to one knee, smoke rising from his armor. Then I'll just have to burn brighter. He plunged his hands into the barrier again. The air shuddered. Sparks erupted. His roar shook the chamber, echoing like thunder. For a heartbeat, the light dimmed. Morent's smile faltered. Impossible. The barrier shattered like glass. Varian lunged forward, his hand closing around Morent's throat. The Inquisitor gasped, his spellbooks scattering to the floor. You wanted to bind me? Varian hissed. Then know what you're binding. He slammed Morent against the altar, cracking the stone. But before he could strike again, the shard behind them flared. The runes on the floor blazed to life. Chains of light shot from the circle, wrapping around Varian's arms, chest, throat. The crystal pulsed faster, feeding on his strength. Morent laughed through blooded lips. You think I didn't plan for this? Every strike, every word, it all feeds the ritual. The chains lifted Varian into the air. Lightning flashed. His body convulsed as the shard began to drain his power. You've lost, vampire, Morent said. You'll destroy yourself to save nothing. But Varian's eyes burned even brighter, no longer red, but pure white fire. You think you understand power, he said, his voice layered with echoes. But power is nothing without choice. He turned his head toward the prisoners chained to the walls, their eyes wide with terror. Run, he whispered. The chains binding them shattered instantly. The air cracked as his power surged outward, breaking every lock, every seal. Magic screamed through the room, tearing at stone and flesh alike. Morent shielded his eyes. Stop, stop. You wanted a god, Morent. Varian roared. Then face one. The chamber exploded in light and shadow. When the dust settled, half the fortress roof was gone. The crystal lay cracked and smoking. And at the center of the ruin, Varian stood amidst a sea of broken chains, steam rising from his shoulders. Morent was gone, thrown somewhere into the depths of the fortress. Varian staggered forward, one hand pressed against his chest. The ritual had drained him more than he'd expected. His blood burned with holy light and shadow both. For the first time in centuries, he felt truly mortal. He turned toward the shattered stairway just as two figures appeared at the base, Lyra and Eli. Varian. Lyra's voice broke with relief. He met her gaze, and for a moment, the ancient warrior looked almost human again. You shouldn't be here, he said softly. It's not over yet. Above them, the remaining inquisitors rallied. Dozens poured into the hall, crossbows gleaming with silver bolts. Get behind me, Varian commanded. He raised one arm, and a wave of dark mist rolled outward, forming a shield. The first volley struck it and disintegrated into ash. You can't fight them all, Lyra shouted. I don't need to, Varian said. I just need them to remember. He snapped his fingers, and the torches went out. The hall plunged into darkness. And in that darkness, the Vampire King moved like a storm. The screams began almost immediately. Shadows flickered across the walls, swift and silent. Inquisitors fired blindly, their silver bolts clattering uselessly to the floor. Varian was everywhere at once, striking, vanishing, reappearing behind them. Each blow left only unconscious bodies in his wake. He no longer sought death, only the end of the lie. Lightning split the sky through the shattered dome, casting brief flashes of the chaos below. Lyra held Eli close beneath the altar, shielding him from falling debris. Is he winning? Eli whispered. Lyra's eyes never left the storm of shadows. He's surviving. That's different. One by one, the Inquisitors fell. Only Morent remained. He stumbled from the ruins of the far doorway, his armor cracked, his left eye bleeding. But in his hand, he held the Velsera shard, still glowing faintly. You think this ends with your victory, he shouted. Fool. The light does not die with me. He drove the shard into his own chest. The world stopped. The glow flared brighter than the sun, swallowing the chamber in white fire. Varian turned just in time to see Morant's body dissolve, the shard melting into his heart. His scream became a roar, his form twisting into something unholy, half man, half radiant flame. The Velsera Ascendant. He's become the ritual, Varian murmured. Morant's voice was no longer human. I am the light that purges darkness. He raised his hands, and pillars of holy fire erupted from the ground. The air seared. Varian shielded Lyra and Eli with his cloak, the fabric burning in places but holding fast. Get them out. Varian shouted over the roar. Now. What about you? Lyra cried. Go. He stepped forward, meeting the burning gaze of the creature that had once been Morant. The two forces collided like night and dawn. Every impact shattered stone. Holy fire clashed against shadow, light tearing through the darkness and darkness swallowing the flame. Each blow sent ripples through the ruins, shaking the ground for miles. Eli watched in awe and terror. He's fighting the sun, he whispered. Lyra grabbed his hand. We can't help him if we're dead. Come. They ran toward the lower hall, ducking falling debris. Behind them, Varian's roar echoed through the fortress. You were a man once. Varian shouted. You could have chosen mercy. Mercy is weakness. Morant's voice thundered. I bring order. Then your order dies with you. Their clash lit the sky. Blackthorn Fortress, visible for miles, now glowed like a beacon aflame. Outside, villagers and soldiers alike looked up in horror as lightning and darkness wove together above the tower. Inside, Varian faltered. The holy fire burned through his magic, cutting deep into his flesh. For a moment, he fell to one knee, his strength waning. Morant loomed over him, voice triumphant. Even kings fall before judgment. And tyrants, Varian growled, fall before truth. He drove his hand into the cracked marble beneath them, channeling the last of his power into the stone. The ground split apart, revealing the ancient river beneath the fortress. Water surged upward in a massive wave, dousing the flames. The holy fire hissed and dimmed. Morant staggered, his glow flickering. Varian rose, eyes burning with white gold light. For once, light and darkness mingled within him in perfect balance. You wanted to end the cycle, he said. So do I. He leapt forward, seizing Morant's chest where the shard pulsed. Then end it here. The shard cracked. A scream tore through the sky. The explosion ripped the fortress apart. When the storm cleared, the fortress was gone. Only a crater remained, filled with mist and rain. Lyra and Eli stood on the far hill, drenched and shaking. For a long time, there was nothing, only silence and the smell of smoke. Then a figure rose from the ruins. Varian, burned and blooded, his cloak in tatters. The light in his eyes dimmed back to red. He walked toward them, step by step, until he stood before Lyra. It's done, he said quietly. Lyra stared at him, tears blurring her vision. You destroyed him. No, Varian said. He destroyed himself. I merely gave him the truth he asked for. He looked toward the horizon where dawn began to break. The first sunlight touched his face. He didn't flinch. Eli stepped forward. You're not burning. Varian smiled faintly. No. Not anymore. The ritual changed me. Light and shadow both live in my blood now. I suppose I'm something new. Lyra took his hand. Then maybe the world can change with you. The Vampire King looked at the rising sun, the first he'd seen in centuries, and said softly, perhaps it already has. He turned to Eli. Your mother once asked me to protect your village. I failed that. But I can keep her promise to the world. What promise? Eli asked. That mercy is not weakness, Varian said. It's strength, stronger than war, stronger than hate. The wind swept through the valley, carrying away the smoke and ash. Behind them, the ruins of Blackthorn glowed faintly in the light of morning. The boy reached for his mother's hand. Varian stood beside them, silent, watching the sunrise. For the first time since the night he became a king, he felt peace. And though the world would whisper his name in fear for centuries to come, those who saw him that day knew the truth. The monster had saved mankind. Chapter 13, The King Without a Throne. The rain fell softly over the ruins of Blackthorn for 3 days and 3 nights. What had once been a fortress of faith and fire was now a crater of stone and silence. The river below had swallowed half the ruins, leaving broken towers jutting from the mist like the ribs of a dead beast. Varian remained there, silent and unmoving, sitting on a fragment of shattered marble where the altar had once stood. His cloak was torn to threads, his armor blackened, but his eyes, those endless, crimson eyes, were calm. Lyra and Eli kept their distance at first. He hadn't spoken since the explosion. He simply watched the horizon, as if expecting the sun to judge him. On the morning of the 4th day, Eli finally approached. "You haven't fed," the boy said quietly. "You'll get weaker." Varian smiled faintly. "Perhaps weakness is what I need. Strength has cost me enough." Eli sat beside him, shivering under his cloak. "You saved everyone. You stopped him." Varian's gaze stayed on the sky. "Did I? The fortress is gone, yes. Morant's army scattered. But his words remain. There will always be another who believes monsters must burn for the world to stay pure. Then we'll stop them too," Eli said, stubborn. Varian looked at him for a long moment. "You've inherited your mother's courage." He stood, his cloak dripping rain. "But courage is not enough." "Not anymore." Lyra joined them, her face pale but determined. "Then what now?" "You said you'd keep the promise to protect the innocent." Varian looked down at his hands. In the dim light, they seemed to glow faintly, neither shadow nor sunlight, but something between. "I meant what I said. But I can't do it alone. My kind are scattered, hunted. The humans will call me a demon for what happened here." "Let them talk," Lyra said. "They've been wrong before." "Yes," Varian said softly. "And yet their belief builds empires." He turned to face them both. "The world needs something new. A symbol, not a king of monsters or a god of men. Something that reminds both sides what mercy costs." Eli's eyes widened. "You mean, like peace?" Varian smiled faintly. "Peace is too clean a word. What I mean is balance. The kind that keeps both night and dawn alive." He stepped toward the edge of the crater. The sunlight broke through the clouds, falling across his shoulders. To their shock, it didn't burn him. It shimmered against his skin like light on water. Lyra whispered, "You've changed." "The ritual left something in me," he said. "Morant's fire, my shadow, they merged. I'm not what I was. Not human. Not vampire." He turned back to them. "But I can use that." Eli stood, his face set. "Then we'll help you." Varian's expression softened, the faintest warmth breaking through his usual calm. "You already have, little one." By nightfall, they had built a small camp near the base of the crater. Survivors from nearby villages began to arrive, humans, wounded and afraid, seeking shelter from the chaos that had followed the fortress's fall. Rumors spread faster than truth. The Vampire King destroyed the Inquisition. The Vampire King brought down fire from heaven. The Vampire King walks in sunlight now. Varian didn't correct any of them. He spent his nights listening to the whispers around the fires. People spoke his name with fear, but also awe. He could feel it, the fragile beginning of something larger. On the second night, a group of humans approached his camp. Soldiers, but not inquisitors. Their leader, a grizzled man with a scar down his jaw, stopped a few paces away. "We came to see the one who ended Morant," the man said cautiously. "You've found him," Varian replied. "They say you killed thousands." "They exaggerate," Varian said. "Most of them killed themselves chasing power." The man hesitated. "If that's true, then what do you want now?" Varian stood. The campfire's light flickered across his face. "What I want," he said slowly, "is to stop the next war before it begins. The Inquisition is broken, but its poison remains. Fear does not die with its master." "You expect us to trust you?" the soldier asked. "No," Varian said. "But perhaps you'll remember who ended the last monster you feared." The soldier studied him, then gave a stiff nod. "If you're serious about peace, we'll tell the other villages. The world should know the truth." "Tell them this," Varian said quietly. "The darkness did not win that night. Neither did the light. They met and learned they could coexist. The man didn't fully understand, but he bowed slightly. As you wish. As the soldiers left, Lyra watched them disappear into the mist. They'll twist your words. Varian's eyes followed the horizon. They always do. But sometimes, even twisted truth can plant a seed. He looked at Eli. Tomorrow, we head east. There's a city where vampires and humans once lived together briefly, before war destroyed it. If we rebuild there, it might stand again as proof that both kinds can survive side by side. Eli nodded, determination bright in his eyes. Then we'll build it. Lyra smiled faintly. Hollowmere reborn. Varian looked toward the sunrise, the faintest hint of hope touching his voice. Yes. A place where no one runs to monsters for mercy again, because mercy will already live there. Chapter 14, The Dawn Pact. They traveled for days along the river, through lands still scarred by the Inquisition's reach. Everywhere they went, people recognized the boy and the woman who had walked beside the vampire king. Some looked on them with reverence. Others with fear. But none dared attack. By the 7th day, they reached the remains of the old city Esmere Vale, long abandoned since the vampire wars centuries before. Its towers leaned, its streets cracked and wild with vines. But the bones of greatness still stood. Eli's eyes lit up. It's huge. Varian stepped past a collapsed gate, his boots crunching on gravel. It was the first city where human and vampire kings shared a throne. The experiment ended in fire. Perhaps we can finish what they began. Lyra ran her fingers over the carved stone of an old fountain. This place remembers pain. Then we'll teach it peace, Varian said. They began with work. Varian, stronger than a dozen men, lifted fallen beams. Lyra directed the survivors who followed them, families, wanderers, even outcasts from both races. Eli organized the children, collecting scraps, building small fires. Each night, more people arrived. By the 5th evening, there were hundreds. By the 10th, thousands. Some came to see the legend, others came because the world beyond was burning with vengeance. Varian built no throne. He sat with the builders, carried stones, and listened to the cries of widows and orphans. Word spread that the sunlit vampire refused to rule, refused to feed, and spent his nights teaching peace through story and silence. But peace drew enemies. On the 12th night, a scout ran into the camp, panting. Riders, he shouted. 2 armies. One flying the king's banner, one the mark of the old vampire clans. Varian rose, his face unreadable. So it begins, he said. Eli's hand found his. They're coming to fight you, aren't they? No, Varian said. They're coming to fight each other. They only need an excuse. Lyra looked toward the horizon, where torches glimmered like twin lines of fire. They'll destroy everything before it even begins. Varian looked at her and said quietly, then I'll give them a reason to stop. He stepped into the square, where hundreds gathered around the great bonfire. Listen to me, he called. His voice carried through the air, deep and clear. The armies come because they fear what we've built. They fear what peace costs them, power, control, pride. But tonight, we show them something stronger than all of that. He lifted his hand, and light poured from his palm, not red, not gold, but the color of dawn itself. The crowd gasped as it spread across the ruins, bathing the city in warmth. I am not your king, Varian said. I am not your savior. I am proof that monsters and men can bleed for the same dream. If they call me abomination, so be it. Let them come. Let them see that what they destroy tonight will rise again tomorrow. The people cheered. Even the frightened ones stood taller. Lyra looked at him in awe. What are you doing? Finishing the promise, he said. The armies arrived by dawn. 2 vast forces faced each other across the valley. On one side, human banners gleaming beneath the sun, on the other, vampires cloaked in shadow. Between them stood Esmere Vale, its half-built walls glowing faintly with the strange light Varian had left behind. The generals on both sides gave the same command. Kill the abomination. But before the first arrow flew, Varian appeared on the wall. He was unarmed, unarmored, his cloak trailing like smoke. His eyes, now shimmering with both light and shadow, scanned both armies. "If you wish to end me," he shouted, "then end me. But know this, you'll only prove Morent right. You'll prove that monsters deserve the world more than men." The soldiers hesitated. Varian spread his arms. "I will not fight you. If my death gives peace, then so be it. But if even one of you still believes there's another way, then stand down." For a long time, there was silence. Then, from the human ranks, a soldier dropped his sword. Another followed. From the vampire's side, a voice called out, "He speaks truth." One by one, weapons fell. The two armies lowered their banners. The dawn wind carried away the smoke of hatred, leaving only the sound of breathing and disbelief. Eli ran to Varian, tears streaming down his face. "You did it." Varian looked out across the quiet field, his expression unreadable. "No, Eli. We did." He turned to the gathered thousands. "Let this place be a pact between night and day. Let no one kneel before me. Kneel only to the truth that peace demands the courage to forgive." Lyra's hand found his. "And what about you?" He smiled faintly. "The world no longer needs a king of vampires. It needs a keeper of balance." She frowned. "And you'll just walk away?" Varian looked toward the sunrise. "Perhaps not walk. Perhaps simply fade where I'm meant to." As the first light of morning touched his face, his body shimmered, becoming translucent. "Varian!" Eli cried. "Don't go." Varian knelt, placing a hand over the boy's heart. "You don't need me anymore. The promise lives in you now. But you'll come back, right?" Varian smiled. "In every dawn that breaks over shadow, I already have." The light consumed him. The mist swirled. When it cleared, he was gone. Eli and Lyra stood in silence, the armies watching in stunned stillness. Then, slowly, the sun rose fully over Esmir Vale, the reborn city of peace. And in that light, for just a moment, the shadow of great wings spread across the valley before fading into gold. Chapter 15, The City of Dawn. Years passed. The war never returned. Esmir Vale, once a ruin of dust and bones, had become a living city again, neither human nor vampire, but something entirely new. The people called it the City of Dawn, where night and light met in peace. It was a place built on stories of a vampire king who burned for mercy, of a healer who taught compassion, and a boy who carried both their hopes. Eli was no longer the frightened child who had run through the storm to beg for help. He had grown tall, his eyes steady and bright like his mother's. The mark on his chest, the ancient circle of red and gold from the blood oath, still pulsed faintly when he stood in sunlight. It reminded him of the promise that had birthed this city: mercy over fear, truth over power. He walked through the rebuilt streets as the dawn bells rang, calling the city to wake. Children laughed in the distance. Merchants opened stalls filled with food from both worlds, bloodfruit from the northern forests beside loaves of wheat bread. Human guards stood shoulder to shoulder with vampires in silver and onyx armor, their faces calm, not suspicious. Eli smiled faintly. He would have liked this. His mother, Lyra, had grown older but not weaker. Her healing hall was the heart of the city, open to all. Humans came seeking cures for sickness, vampires came seeking balance for their hunger. And when they asked her how such peace could last, she always gave the same answer. Because one monster remembered what mercy felt like. That morning, as Eli helped her prepare supplies, a messenger burst into the hall, breathless and pale. "Mistress Lyra, there's trouble at the Northern Watch." Lyra frowned. "What kind of trouble?" "A stranger, my lady. He crossed the border last night. He wears armor black as the old king's, and he claims to be carrying the vampire king's blood." Eli froze. Lyra's eyes flicked toward him, sharp. "Bring him to the council chambers. No harm is to come to him." When the messenger ran off, she turned to her son. "You're thinking what I am." "It's impossible," Eli said. "He's gone." "He." Lyra touched his shoulder gently. "Perhaps. Or perhaps he left more behind than we knew." The stranger arrived at sunset. He was tall, lean, his armor gleaming with symbols none had seen since the fall of Blackthorn. His skin was pale, But his eyes, not red like a vampire's, were a deep amber, glowing faintly in shadow. When the guards tried to escort him, he raised a hand. "No need," he said. "I came to speak, not fight." When he entered the council chamber, silence filled the room. The elders of Esmere Vale, the first humans and vampires to sign the Dawn Pact, sat around a long wooden table. Lyra stood at its head. Eli stood beside her. "You claim to carry the blood of the Vampire King," Lyra said evenly. "Explain yourself." The stranger bowed his head. "I carry his name. And his duty." He removed his gauntlet and drew a blade across his palm. The blood that flowed was black, shot through with gold, glowing faintly like sunlight through ink. The council gasped. Eli's breath caught. "That's impossible." "Nothing is impossible," the stranger said quietly. "Varian's power didn't die with him. It found a vessel, a lineage born from the balance he created. I am one of them. My name is Kale." Lyra studied him carefully. "If what you say is true, why come here now?" Kale's expression darkened. "Because the peace you built is cracking. Not from war, but from within." He dropped a scroll onto the table. Sealed with wax marked by the burning eye. The same sigil that once belonged to the Inquisition. Eli's jaw tightened. "That symbol should have died with Morent." "It didn't," Kale said. "A sect has risen from his ashes. They call themselves the Redeemers. They believe the Velsera ritual can be completed again using Varian's blood. They've been hunting the remnants of his power." The room fell into silence. Lyra's voice was low. "And you think they'll come here?" Kale nodded. "They already have spies within your walls." Eli felt the pulse in his chest flare, the mark burning faintly beneath his shirt. It had never done that before. "He's right," Eli said quietly. "They're close." That night, rain returned to Esmere Vale. Eli walked along the ramparts overlooking the river. The city glowed below, lanterns reflecting on the water. He found Kale standing there, staring out into the storm. "You really knew him, didn't you?" Eli asked. Kale didn't answer right away. "Not in life," he said finally. "But I've dreamed of his memories. His thoughts still echo through the blood. Sometimes I wake with his voice in my head." "What does he say?" Kale turned his amber eyes toward Eli. "He says the hardest part of peace isn't winning it, it's keeping it alive." Eli nodded slowly. He was right. For a while, they stood in silence, the rain hissing softly around them. "If the Redeemers come," Kale said, "they won't just want power. They'll want proof that Varian's legacy still lives." "That proof is you." Eli frowned. "Me? Why?" Kale's gaze fell to the faint glow on Eli's chest. "That mark. It's part of the same bond that tied your mother to him. The last link of the blood oath. To them, it's the key to restarting the ritual. Then they'll have to kill me to get it," Eli said flatly. Kale smiled faintly. "I expected nothing less." 2 nights later, the attack came. It began with silence. No alarms, no cries. Just the sound of wind whistling through the narrow streets, and then the sudden, sharp crack of thunder that wasn't thunder at all. Lyra woke first. Her window exploded inward, shards of glass scattering like stars. Figures in black cloaks flooded through, their masks painted with the burning eye. "The Redeemers," she hissed. Eli burst into the room a heartbeat later, sword already drawn. "Mom." The attackers struck fast, too fast. Kale appeared from the shadows, blades flashing. His movements were almost identical to Varian's, graceful, precise, deadly. The Redeemers fell one by one, but more climbed through the windows, chanting prayers twisted into curses. Eli's mark blazed beneath his shirt, flooding his veins with light. Every strike he made left trails of golden flame in the air. Lyra gasped, recognizing it. "Varian's power," she whispered. "It's answering you." "Then let it." Eli shouted, cutting through 2 more attackers. Kale blocked a spear meant for Lyra, twisting it away with inhuman speed. "The city's under siege. We have to reach the tower." They fought their way through the streets. Fires burned in the distance, screams echoing from the lower quarters. Human and vampire guards battled side by side against the black-clad invaders. When they reached the central square, the Redeemer leader stood waiting, his mask pure white, his voice cold as winter. "You carry his light," the man said to Eli. "And so you carry his curse." Eli raised his sword. "If Varian's blood built this city, then it's not a curse. It's salvation." The leader's laughter was soft and cruel. "Salvation is just another kind of control. The same lie your king told himself." He lifted his hands, revealing a crystal shard, the last piece of the Velsera stone. "But we will finish what Morent began." He threw it into the air. It exploded with blinding light. The world vanished into white. Chapter 16, The Return of Shadows. When Eli opened his eyes, he was somewhere else. The city was gone. He stood in an endless plain of grey mist, the sky streaked with gold and black. His heartbeat echoed in the silence, each pulse matching the faint glow of the mark on his chest. Then he heard it, a voice behind him, low and calm. "You shouldn't be here yet." Eli turned. Varian stood there. He looked the same as the night he vanished, pale, regal, his cloak fluttering in a wind that didn't exist. But his eyes were no longer red. They were soft amber, like the horizon before sunrise. Eli's throat tightened. "You're real." Varian smiled faintly. "Only as much as you need me to be." The shard they used tore the veil between our worlds. "For a moment, you and I exist together. The Redeemers, they're trying to finish the ritual." "I know," Varian said. "And they can't. Not without your consent. The power they seek flows through choice, not force." Eli looked down at his hands. "Then how do I stop them?" Varian stepped closer. "By remembering what built this city. Not strength. Not fear. Mercy. Mercy won't stop them," Eli snapped. "They're burning everything." "Mercy isn't surrender," Varian said softly. "It's the courage to fight without hate." He placed a hand over Eli's heart. The mark flared, golden and red intertwining like fire and blood. "The world doesn't need another king. It needs a keeper of balance. That is your role now." Eli's eyes burned with tears. "I'm not ready." "Neither was I," Varian said. "That's how you know it's time." The mist began to dissolve. The world around them shimmered back into color. Varian's voice grew distant. "Remember, Eli. Dawn always comes after shadow because they were never enemies to begin with." Then he was gone. Eli awoke to chaos. The square was half destroyed. The crystal shard pulsed above, casting violent light across the city. The Redeemers chanted, their voices merging into one terrible harmony. Lyra lay unconscious nearby. Kale knelt beside her, wounded but alive. He looked up as Eli stirred. "The shard's alive. It's feeding on the blood pact." Eli stood, the mark on his chest glowing brighter than ever. "Then I'll end it." Kale grabbed his arm. "You'll die." "Maybe," Eli said. "But not like him. Not as a monster." He stepped toward the light. The Redeemers screamed as he entered the circle. The crystal flared, beams of pure energy shooting outward. Eli's feet left the ground. His hair whipped in the wind, golden fire tracing his veins. He remembered Varian's words, "Mercy isn't surrender. It's courage." He opened his hands. The light split. The red half of the mark, the vampire's blood, flowed outward, wrapping around the shard like smoke. The gold half, his mother's, merged with it. For a heartbeat, all sound stopped. Then the light exploded, not in destruction, but in release. The Redeemers were thrown back, their masks shattering. The shard fractured, turning into dust that rained softly over the square. Kale shielded his eyes. When he looked again, the sky was clear. The fires were gone. And at the center of the square, Eli stood alive, surrounded by faint gold mist. Lyra stirred, whispering his name. He ran to her, dropping to his knees. "It's over," he said, breathless. "He helped me stop it." She asked weakly. Eli smiled faintly. "Varian." When dawn came, the people gathered in silence. The city still stood. The Redeemers were gone, their faith broken by the very mercy they'd tried to destroy. Kale stepped forward, bowing low before Eli. "You did what he could not. You gave the world peace without sacrifice. Eli looked at the rising sun. He gave me the strength to try. Lyra took his hand. Then we continue the promise, just as he wanted. Esmir Vale glowed beneath the new light of day. The wind carried away the last traces of smoke, leaving the scent of rain and life. And above the city, just for an instant, a shadow passed over the sun, vast wings made of light and darkness both. Eli looked up and whispered, "Rest now, King of Dawn. Your promise lives." Chapter 17, The Weight of Peace. The years after the fall of the Redeemers brought a peace deeper than any that had come before it. But peace, Eli learned, was not silence, it was a balance between memory and vigilance, between forgiveness and the shadows that waited just outside the light. Esmir Vale, once reborn under the promise of dawn, had grown into a city of harmony and paradox. By day, its markets hummed with laughter; by night, its spires glowed silver with lanterns shaped like stars. Vampires and humans worked side by side, farmers traded bloodfruit for grain, and healers taught both kinds the arts of preservation rather than war. Eli stood on the same balcony where, years ago, Varian had faced two armies and chosen peace over vengeance. Now, he wore no armor, only simple robes marked with the symbol of the intertwined sun and moon, the crest of the Dawn Pact. Below him, the city bustled. But Eli's gaze was fixed on the horizon, where the forest met the mist. He could feel the mark on his chest faintly burning, not in pain, but as if whispering warning. Lyra joined him quietly, her hair streaked with silver now. "You felt it too," she said. Eli nodded. "The balance is shifting. Something moves in the outer lands. The light feels restless." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Kale says the same. There are whispers from the east, tribes calling themselves the Children of Twilight. They claim to speak in Varian's name." Eli frowned. Varian would never call for division. "No," Lyra said softly. "But stories can be bent as easily as truth." A gust of wind swept through the balcony, carrying the scent of the river below. For a moment, Eli thought he heard a voice, faint, like an echo through time. Peace must be defended by those who remember why it matters. He turned to his mother. "I'll go to them. If they're using his name, they need to hear the truth from someone who knew it." "You don't have to go alone," she said. "Kale will ride with you." Eli smiled faintly. "He'd insist even if I said no." They left at dawn. The river road wound through valleys that once bore the scars of war. Now, green returned to the hills, and villages thrived again. Children waved as they passed, some with fangs, some without. It was a world Varian had dreamed of, breathing, fragile, real. Kale rode beside him in silence for a long while. The younger vampire's amber eyes flickered beneath his hood, reflecting the morning light. "You've changed," Kale said finally. "You carry yourself like him now." Eli chuckled. "I'm not a king." Neither was he. Not at the end. They rode until the road narrowed into a trail through ancient woods. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The trees grew tall and silent, their trunks etched with strange symbols, half sun, half shadow. Kale dismounted, crouching beside one. "The Children of Twilight," he murmured. "Their mark." Eli touched the carving. "It's a distortion of the Dawn Pact. They believe Varian's balance wasn't enough," Kale said grimly. "They see light and shadow as enemies that must fuse into one. No separation. No choice." Eli's pulse quickened. "Then they've misunderstood everything. Or they were taught wrong." As they moved deeper, they saw movement ahead, torches swaying in the fog. Figures in grey cloaks stepped into the clearing, eyes glimmering like polished stone. Their leader, a woman with pale hair and ash on her cheeks, raised a hand. "You carry his blood," she said to Kale. "And his mark rests within you," she said to Eli. "You are welcome among us, Children of Dawn." Eli's hand went to the pendant around his neck. "We are not your enemies," he said carefully. But Varian's message was never one of worship. The woman's lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And yet, without worship, how do we remember?" "By living what he taught," Eli said. "By choosing peace when anger tempts us." She tilted her head. "Peace is fragile. Too fragile for this world." Varian showed us that power and mercy can live together, but he failed to realize what comes after. True balance, young Eli, requires sacrifice. At her signal, the fog behind her shifted. Dozens of figures emerged, humans and vampires, their faces hidden by masks of bone and silver. Kale stiffened. They've built an army. Not an army, the woman said. A shield. The world forgets balance too easily. We will remind it, with blood if we must. Eli's voice was calm, but cold. You twist his words into excuses for control. That is not balance, it's tyranny reborn. The woman's eyes flashed. And yet, isn't that what peace always becomes? The strong deciding what others should believe. Her words hit harder than any blade. For a moment, Eli saw the truth of them, the danger of becoming what one swore to end. He stepped forward slowly. If you believe I lead you astray, then strike me now. But if you believe in what Varian stood for, then stand with me instead. Because the world doesn't need another king of light or darkness. It needs keepers of both. Silence rippled through the crowd. Then, one of the masked followers dropped his weapon. Another followed. One by one, the torches lowered. The woman's composure faltered as the light of the fire danced across faces filled with doubt. She hissed. Fools. You think mercy will protect you when the next shadow rises? Eli met her gaze. No. But it will remind us what's worth protecting. The woman's fury burned bright. Then so be it. She turned and vanished into the fog. Her followers dispersed, some kneeling before Eli, others fading silently into the night. Kale exhaled. You've just saved us from another war. Eli shook his head. No. Only delayed it. There will always be someone who mistakes peace for weakness. Then we keep teaching them, Kale said quietly. Like he did. Eli looked up at the moon breaking through the clouds. Like he still does. Chapter 18, The King's Echo. The children of twilight scattered after that night, but their whispers spread like smoke. Tales of the boy who carried Varian's light traveled far beyond Ismir Vale. Some said he could call dawn with a word, others said his blood burned demons into dust. Eli ignored most of them. He had learned, as Varian once had, that legend rarely told the truth. Years later, when Lyra's hair turned white and Kale had become commander of the city's watch, Eli walked alone to the edge of the world. There, beyond the forest and the river, stretched the plains where the first war had been fought, the same soil that had soaked up blood from both sides centuries ago. The sky above was streaked with gold and silver clouds. He sat in the tall grass and let the wind move around him. From his pouch, he drew a piece of blackened crystal, the last shard of the Velsera stone, recovered from the ruins of Blackthorn years before. It no longer glowed, no longer pulsed with power. But when he held it up to the light, he could see his reflection faintly in it, and another behind him. Varian. His voice was softer now, not commanding but warm, carried on the wind. You've done what I could not. You've given them years of peace. Eli didn't turn. Peace feels heavier than war. Every choice echoes. That is how you know it matters, Varian said. I once believed peace could be carved by power. You've proven it can be grown by patience. Eli smiled faintly. I learned from the best. Then keep learning, Varian said. Because balance is never finished. Every dawn begins with darkness and every shadow hides a spark of light. The wind quieted. The faint shimmer of Varian's figure faded back into the horizon. Eli sat for a long time after, watching the sun rise. The grass glowed like liquid gold. He thought of all that had come before, the boy running through rain, the vampire king's oath, the fortress of chains, the world reborn. He thought of the mark on his chest, and how it had once burned with power. Now, it was quiet, warm, steady, peaceful. He whispered into the wind, rest now, Varian. The world remembers. When Eli returned to Esmir Vale, the city was celebrating the anniversary of the Dawn Pact. The bells rang through the streets, children carried lanterns shaped like wings. Kale greeted him at the gates, smiling. You missed the speeches. Eli laughed. Good. I never liked speeches. Your mother's waiting, Kale said softly. She says the city should hear one last story tonight. The central square was lit with 1,000 candles. Lyra stood on the old steps of the council hall, her voice carrying through the hush. We gather not to worship, but to remember. Not to praise what was, but to protect what is. Years ago, a boy ran to a king begging for mercy. That mercy saved not only his mother, but the world. Let us never forget that strength is not born from hate, it grows from compassion. She beckoned Eli forward. The crowd parted as he stepped up beside her. Lyra took his hand, tears glimmering in her eyes. You kept his promise. We all did, he said. The crowd cheered, a sound that rose like thunder, like wings beating against dawn. Eli looked over the faces, human, vampire, and everything between, and for a moment, he swore he saw a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. Tall, cloaked in black, watching with quiet pride. When he blinked, the figure was gone. Lyra squeezed his hand. He never really left. Eli smiled through his tears. No. He just became the dawn. That night, as the city slept beneath the stars, Eli climbed to the high tower where the old banners of war once hung. He tied 2 new ones side by side, one white, one black, stitched together down the middle. As the wind caught them, they billowed in harmony. Below, Esmere Vale glowed like a beacon, the world's first city built by both night and day. Eli whispered into the wind, his voice carrying to the horizon. The promise endures. The dawn remembers. And somewhere beyond sight, in the unseen spaces between shadow and sunlight, a soft voice answered. Always. The banners rippled together, and the world, at long last, was still. The story of the Vampire King may have ended, but in the world of dawn and shadow, every ending is just a beginning. If this tale stirred something in you, hit that subscribe button, light up the notification bell, and join me as we uncover more stories where light meets darkness, and legends never truly die. Leave your thoughts in the comments, tell me, was Varian a monster, or a savior? Until next time, keep your heart brave, your mind open, and remember, even in the darkest night, the dawn always finds its way.